I want to tell you about a phone call I never answered. It came on a Wednesday afternoon in March. I was in the kitchen, hands still damp from washing up the lunch dishes. The phone buzzed on the counter. I looked down at the name on the screen. It was my son, Daniel, calling for the first time in 730 days. Picked up the phone. I looked at his name. And then I set it back down on the counter and watched it ring until it stopped. Some of you will understand that immediately. Some of you will think, how could a mother do that? By the end of this story, I think you will understand. Before I go further, if you have ever waited for a call that never came, this channel was made for you. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with me. My name is Eleanor. I am 71 years old. And this is the story of the 2 years my son forgot he had a mother, and the one morning I finally remembered what I deserved. I raised Daniel alone for most of his childhood. His father, my husband Robert, passed away when Daniel was 9 years old. A heart attack on a Sunday morning in February. Quiet and fast, the way Robert had always lived. I was 43. Daniel was 9. And it was just the two of us from that morning forward. We lived in a 3-bedroom house on Birchwood Lane in a small town in Yorkshire. Nothing grand. A bay window in the front room where I kept Robert's reading chair. A garden where I grew sweet peas every summer because Robert had loved them. A kitchen that always smelled of toast in the mornings. I worked for 27 years as a school secretary at the local primary school. I knew every child's name, every parent's worry, every teacher's birthday. I was not a woman who was easy to overlook in a room. And yet somehow, in the years after Daniel married, I became very easy to overlook indeed. Daniel met Sasha when he was 31. She was sharp and confident and laughed very loudly at things that weren't quite funny enough to deserve it. I did not dislike her at first. I tried very hard not to dislike her. But there is a particular kind of woman who looks at her husband's mother and sees not a person but an obligation. And Sasha had that look from the very first Sunday lunch. The wedding was lovely. I sat in the front row in a pale blue dress I had bought specially and cried in the way mothers cry, with joy on the surface and something more complicated underneath. For the first 2 years I was still included. Christmas, bank holidays, the occasional Sunday. And then, slowly, the invitations stopped arriving. It did not happen with a single cruel moment. It happened the way most painful things happen. Gradually and then all at once. First it was Christmas. I was told, very pleasantly, that they were spending it with Sasha's family this year. Then the following Easter. Then Daniel's birthday dinner that I was not invited to. Each time there was a reason. Sasha's parents were visiting. They had plans. Daniel was very busy with work. I told myself it was a phase. I told myself all marriages go through an adjustment. I told myself to be patient. Then came the Sunday in April, 2 years and 3 months ago, when Daniel called me. Not to ask how I was. Tell me something. Mum, he said, and his voice had the flatness of a man reading from notes. Sasha and I have talked and we think it would be better for everyone if we had a bit of space for a while. Things have been tense. You know how it is. I did not know how it was. I had not done anything that I was aware of. Is this coming from you or from Sasha? I asked him. There was a pause. Does it matter? He said. I want to remember exactly what I said next because I have thought about it many times since. I said nothing. I simply held the phone. And after a moment he said, I'll be in touch, Mum. Take care of yourself. He hung up. I stood in the kitchen on Birchwood Lane for a long time after that. The sweet peas were just beginning to come up outside the window. Robert's chair sat empty in the front room. I made a cup of tea. I sat down. And I began to understand that waiting for my son to come back was something I could spend the rest of my life doing, or something I could simply choose to stop. Chose to stop. What Daniel did not know, what he could not have known because he had stopped calling, was what I had been doing during those 730 days of silence. I had been living, not performing grief, not sitting by the phone, living. In the first month I called an estate agent, not because I had to, 'cause I wanted to. The house on Birchwood Lane had been in my name since Robert died. 3 bedrooms, a bay window, a garden full of sweet peas. Daniel had grown up in that house. And I knew, with the quiet certainty of a woman who has had 2 years to think clearly, that somewhere in the back of his mind, Daniel had always assumed that house would one day be his. I sold it in September. The buyers were a young couple with a 3-year-old daughter who stood in the kitchen with her arms out, spinning in circles. I told the estate agent to accept their offer the same afternoon. The sale was completed in November. I bought a small cottage 30 miles away in a village called Ashford Green. 2 bedrooms. A south-facing garden. A kitchen with a window over the sink where I put Robert's African violet that had somehow survived 22 years and 3 house moves. I did not tell Daniel. He had not called. So there was no one to tell. With the difference from the sale, I did 3 things. I paid off the small mortgage remaining on the new cottage outright. I put £31,000 into a savings account. And I updated my will with a solicitor named Margaret Hale, who had a very calm manner and asked no unnecessary questions. By the time the first anniversary of Daniel's phone call arrived, I was living in a house that was entirely mine, in a village where nobody knew my history, with a garden where I was learning, for the first time in my adult life, what it felt like to plant something only for myself. I want to tell you what those 2 years actually looked like from the inside. 'Cause I think people imagine grief as stillness. They imagine a woman sitting in a dark room waiting. That is not what it looked like. I joined a book club in the village on the 3rd Thursday of every month. 5 women, a bottle of wine, a book nobody had quite finished. I made a friend named Patricia, 73, recently widowed, with a laugh that arrived before she did. She became the kind of friend you do not find twice in a lifetime. I took a watercolor class on Tuesday mornings at the community hall. I was not good at it. I found that I did not need to be good at it to enjoy it enormously. I walked every morning. Not for health, though that came too, but because I had spent 27 years walking to work in the same direction and I wanted to discover what was in every other direction. I was not happy every day. Let me be honest about that. There were Sunday evenings when the cottage was very quiet, and the silence had a particular quality that felt like absence rather than peace. There were birthdays. Mine, Robert's, Daniel's, when I sat with the phone in my hand and put it back down again. But I was not waiting. That was the difference. I had stopped waiting. And it turns out that when you stop waiting for someone to come back, you discover what was always there. Your own life still running, still entirely yours if you are willing to step back into it. The call came on a Wednesday in March. I was washing up the lunch dishes. The phone buzzed on the counter. I dried my hands on the tea towel, the blue one with the small white anchors that I had bought at a market in Ashford Green on a Saturday in October. Picked up the phone. Daniel. I stood very still. 730 days. No call. No text. No birthday message. Nothing at all. And now, on an ordinary Wednesday in March, his name is on my screen. I thought about the house on Birchwood Lane. Sold, gone, the young couple's daughter spinning in the kitchen. I thought about the will in Margaret Hale's files. I thought about Patricia's laugh and the Tuesday watercolor class and the morning walks in 7 different directions. I thought about the Sunday in April 2 years ago when my son had said, "Does it matter?" and hung up. I set the phone back down on the counter. I watched it ring. 7 rings. And then it stopped. I finished washing the dishes. I made a cup of tea. I sat at the kitchen window and looked at the garden. The sweet peas just beginning to come up along the south wall, the African violet on the windowsill, the small life I had built in the quiet. The phone buzzed once more. Voicemail. I did not listen to it that day. I made a note to myself to listen to it on Thursday. And then I went outside and spent the afternoon in the garden, my hands in the soil, the sun on my face, in a life that was entirely and completely my own. I listened to the voicemail on Thursday morning. Daniel's voice was smaller than I remembered. Sasha had left. He was sorry. He had been thinking about things. He wanted to talk. I sat with it for a long time. Then I called him back. Not that day. Not that week. When I was ready. When I had decided. Not out of anger and not out of guilt but out of my own quiet choice. What kind of relationship I was willing to build and what I was not. I am not telling you that what I did was easy. I am not telling you it was right for everyone. I am telling you that for 68 years I arranged my life around the people I loved. I made myself smaller so they could feel larger. I waited by phones that did not ring. I forgave things that were not asking to be forgiven. And then one Wednesday afternoon I looked at my son's name on a screen and I understood, for the very first time, that love without self-respect is not love. It is just a very long habit of disappearing. I still make 2 cups of tea every morning. Robert's chair is in the front room of the cottage now, in the bay window where the light comes in. Some mornings I sit in it. Some habits outlast the people they were made for. But so do we. Before you go, I want to ask you one question. When Daniel called after 730 days of silence, did Eleanor do the right thing by letting it ring? Yes or no? Tell me in the comments below. And if this story touched something in you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Thank you truly for listening.